Proski here, continuing our lessons for Chapter 2, which is integers and real numbers. We are working with multiplication of real numbers today as Section 2.5, and our essential question is, how do we multiply real numbers? So we have a warm-up. Go ahead and solve all these questions here, which we'll come back to later in the lesson, but for now, just go ahead and solve those questions. All right, welcome back. So we have, let's go ahead and go through these. These are really tricky ones. Hopefully you got them. Let's see. What is, we got number 1 is 6 times 2. 6 times 2 is what? It is 12. And then we have 2 times 6, which is also 12. All right, now we have 2 times 3 times 4. Well, 2 times 3, remember we have to do parentheses first. 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 times 4 is going to be what? It's going to be 24. So it was interesting, I forgot to mention, it's kind of interesting that we switch these around. We got 6 times 2 and 2 times 6, those were both 12. Interesting, huh? Then we got 2 times parentheses 3 times 4. Well, 3 times 4 is going to be what? Got to do parentheses first. And then what's 2 times 12 going to be? It's going to be 24. All right. 16 times 1, really hard question. What's anything times 1? It's going to be itself. So 16 times 1 is going to be 16. Good. And likewise, anything times 0 is going to be what? It's going to be 0. So 9 times 0 is going to be 0. Last one was a little tricky. It's saying 2 times 1/2, which you could put over 1 and multiply straight across like we were multiplying fractions. Or what you could do is just say, what's half of 2? And what's half of 2 going to be? It's going to be 1. You put 2 over 1, you multiply straight across, which would be 2 times 1 is 2. Divided by 1 times 2, which is 2. That's going to equal 1. All right, sounds good. So it says, be careful with your rules. Multiplication and division are different from the addition and subtraction rules, okay? So multiplying numbers with the same sign results in a what? So if I have like 2 times 3, is that a positive 6 or a negative 6? It's going to be a positive 6. What about negative 3 times negative 5? What's that going to be? That's going to be positive 15. So same signs, when you multiply them, you're going to get a positive. Going to get a positive. Okay? And then different signs. So if we did, for example, negative 5 times 2, is that positive 10 or negative 10? That's going to be negative 10. Good. And also we have 9 times negative 4, which is also going to be positive 36 or negative 36? Negative 36. So multiplying two numbers with different signs results in a negative. Okay, so the way I remember this, we think about people. So if you have 2 positive people in the same room, they're going to talk about unicorns and rainbows and have a tremendous time and laugh along and have a good time together. 2 negative people in the same room are also going to have a good time because they're going to complain about everybody else, the negative people or the positive people, and they're going to just enjoy each other's company being negative people. But a positive and a negative person in the same room, they are going to really annoy each other, okay? So that's where you get the negative experience with the positive and negative person, okay? That's kind of how I like to remember that, but it's just kind of a rule. You just kind of have to memorize this stuff, you know what I mean? It's not really like, it's just kind of a rule. So, all right, here we go. Choose your own adventure. I'll leave this up here so you guys can see it. Choose 1 or 2, either 1 or 2, and either 3 or 4. Go ahead and give these a try. All right, let's get into it. So 11 times 7 is going to be 77. Is that positive or negative 77? 2 positives make a positive. It's going to be positive 77. What about negative 4 times negative 5? Is that going to be positive or negative? That's going to be positive. 2 negatives make a positive when you multiply. All right. Now 3 and 4, we're going to work left to right. So we're going to do negative 2 times 5, which is going to be what? It's going to be negative 10, right? Because a negative and a positive make a negative, times negative 1. And what's negative 10 times negative 1? Is that positive 10 or negative 10? That is going to be positive 10. Cool. Now we have negative 3 times negative 5. And is that going to be a positive 15 or negative 15? 2 negatives make a positive. And then what is 15 times negative 2 going to be? That's going to be negative 30. All right. Cool. Now, it says in number 3 and 4, one was positive, one was negative. 3 was positive, 4 was negative. And it says, how can we tell if a product or like when you multiply things together, if it will be positive or negative before we even multiply anything? So it says, come up with a rule using this example as a guide. We have -1 times -7 times -3 times 2 times -4. So what I want to know is if you think this will be a positive result or a negative result when you multiply that all together. Okay? So, well, let's multiply it out here, I guess. It's going to be, I didn't actually multiply it out, but what's the rule? Well, if you look here, every two negatives make a positive when you multiply them, right? So a trick for figuring this out is looking for multiples of 2, because if you have 2 negatives, that's going to equal a positive, right? If you have 4 negatives, that's also going to equal a positive. So basically every pairing of negatives is going to make a positive. What if you had 7 negatives? How many would that be, negative or positive? Well, 7 is 6 plus 1, right? So these would all match up. These 6 would match up, but we'd have 1 left over negative, which is going to end up being a negative result, okay? So how many negatives do we have in this problem here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 2 are going to match up and cancel out. These 2 are going to match up and cancel out, so it's going to end up being a positive result. Do you guys see that? So every 2 negatives are going to pair up and cancel each other out. And if you have any left over, any odd number of negatives, it's going to end up making it negative. So if a product has an even number of negatives, the answer will be positive. And if you have an odd number of negatives, the answer will be negative. Okay? All right. This is important ideas to remember. These 2 expressions have 2 different meanings. We have -2 all to the quantity of -2 all to the 4th, and we have -2 to the 4th. Okay, this one has parentheses, this one doesn't. So this one is saying we have -2 4 times. All right, so these are all going to match up. These are going to cancel out. These are going to cancel out and make a positive 16. 4 times 4 is positive 16. This one's a little bit different down here. Okay, this one is going to be -1 and then times 4 2s. Okay, this is a floating negative. It's like it's a floating -1. So we have -1 times 16, which is going to end up being positive 16 or negative 16. It's negative 16. And it says, in short, parentheses are important. A floating negative can be replaced by a -1. All right. So I'm actually going to, in the video here, I'm going to log into my office hours so I have people coming in here, but I will just stay here and keep doing the video. Sorry about this. Okay, so we're going to keep moving forward here. So, simplifying products with variables. So the steps are, we're going to multiply the numbers and negatives together, and for a negative, we're going to use -1. Then we're going to count the number of variables we have, and we're going to combine what we got. Okay, so this one we have together. We have -3 times x squared times -x times x. This is like a -1x right here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply all the negatives and the numbers together, and then we're going to count how many x's we have. Okay, so we have, what numbers do you guys see here? I see we have -3 and -1. What is -3 times -1 going to be? -3 times -1 is 3. Okay, and then how many x's do we have here? We have 2 here, we got 1 here, and we got 1 here. 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. This is going to be 3x to the 4th. 3x to the 4th. So multiply the numbers together, and then you're going to, when you multiply exponents, you add them. You're going to add up all the exponents that go together here, okay? And there's your answer. All right. If you feel comfortable with it, try number 2 on your own. Otherwise, we're going to go through it. I feel like I went through that one kind of quickly, but do your best and see how you do. All right, we got -4 times y times -2 times y to the 3rd. So we're multiplying these all together here. So the reason why we can move these around and kind of multiply what we want is because it's commutative property. We can multiply in any order that we want, okay? So we're going to multiply the numbers first. It's going to make it easier. So what's -4 times -2 going to be? That's going to be 8. And then we got how many y's? We got 1 y here, and we got 3 y's here. How many y's do we have total? What's 3 plus 1 going to be? It's going to be y to the 4th. Okay? So, yeah, it's kind of tricky. I feel like I went kind of quick with that. But This looks really complicated, but basically by the commutative property, we can multiply whatever we want in what order. And basically we're multiplying the things that are alike. We're going to multiply the numbers together, and we're going to multiply the variables, but we're going to add the variables. When you multiply, so x times x times x equals x to the third, right? Or you could also call it x squared times x, which equals x to the third, right? So when you multiply exponents, you're going to add them up. That's why we can just add them up like that, okay? Kind of tricky, but don't overthink it. We can take questions in class if you're feeling still kind of crazy about this, okay? Not crazy. Unsure about this. All right, Qdoba problems. What are you going to love at Qdoba? One of my favorite restaurants, probably my favorite restaurant. It says evaluate the given expression for the given value. Use parentheses if you need to. So we're going to plug in these numbers in for x, and we're going to solve, or x or y we're going to solve. So let's go ahead and do it. We got pico de gallo, which is the mildest type of salsa, I guess we have there. And then we have queso, which is a little bit spicier, and salsa roja, which is even more spicy. Okay, so we got negative 4x when x equals 3. Well, we're going to take, we're going to plug in 3 in for x, right? So we have negative 4 times 3, which is going to equal what? Negative 12. All right, getting a little bit spicier now. We're going to take this negative 2. We're going to plug it in for x, for queso. We have x to the third plus 2. We're going to, when x equals negative 2. But we're going to plug in, we're going to make sure when you plug stuff in for exponents, you want to use parentheses. Or otherwise it's going to goof it up. Okay? So when you're plugging stuff in for x, when you have exponents, make sure you use parentheses, especially when you're using a negative number that you're plugging in here. Okay? All right, so we have negative 2 to the third plus 2. Or do we do exponents first, or do we do addition first? We do exponents first. So this is, how many negative 2's do we have here? We got 3, which is negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is 8. Negative 8, so we're going to have negative 8 plus 2. And what's negative 8 plus 2 going to be? It's going to be negative 6. All right, last one, salsa roja, the spiciest of them all. We're going to plug in, we got 2y to the third minus 3y when y equals negative 4. We're going to plug in negative 4 in for y here, and actually here too. So we have 2 times negative 4 to the third minus 3 times negative 4. Okay. This is how you evaluate an expression. You just plug it in and you simplify. All right, do we have any parentheses to take care of here? Remember, we do have parentheses, but there's nothing to do inside these parentheses. These are not parentheses. This is actually multiplication right here, and this is an exponent. Okay, these are not actually parentheses like we would say in PEMDAS. So we have exponents. What is negative 4 to the third going to be? It is not negative 12. Be careful. If you plug in negative 4 to the third in your calculator, you're going to get negative 64. Okay. Any other exponents we need to take care of here? Any multiplication or division? We do. We're multiplying this, or we're multiplying negative 3 times negative 4. So what is 2 times negative 64 going to be? It's negative 128. And then what's negative 3 times negative 4? That's plus 12. Okay? You could change this to plus a negative 3 if that's helpful for you, but when I say a negative 3 with a negative 4, I just multiply the negative 3 times negative 4. And our final answer is going to be negative 116 for an answer. Okay? All right, last thing we're going to talk about today is this is all exponents and multiplication of real numbers, what we're working with today. Last thing we're going to talk about are the properties of multiplication. All right. So, remember we had commutative property, associative property, identity property, and inverse property before. But now we're working with multiplication. These are multiplication properties. What word did we associate with commutative property before? So, for example, we had 6 times 2 equals 12, and 2 times 6 equals 12. Oops. What did we change in those two problems there? We changed the what? It starts with an O. We changed the order. So the commutative property, the word we remember for that is order. It's not the order property, it's the commutative property, but we remembered the word order to help us figure out what it's going to be. Okay, associative property we had 2, this is all from the warm-up too, 2 times 3 times 4, and that equaled 24. And we had 2 times the quantity of 3 times 4, in different parentheses there. That also equaled 24. So what did we change between the 2 times 3 and the 3 times 4 here? What did we change? This was 6, this was 12. We changed the way we group those things. The way you group three numbers when you multiply does not change the product. So we're going to remember grouping. Okay? Identity property, the product of a number. So we had 16 times 1 equals 16. The product of a number and 1 is the number. Anything times 1 is itself. We're going to put itself over here. Okay. Next property we had was 9 times 0 equals 0. So the product of a number and 0 is 0. Pretty hard stuff there, huh? I'm going to remember the word 0. Okay. And then the inverse property was when we did 2 times 1/2 equals 1. So what is 1/2? There's a special name for 1/2 in relation to 2. Do you guys know what it is? We put 2 over 1 and we go get 1 over 2. When we flip it, what's that called? What's a fraction called when you flip it? It's called a reciprocal. It's called a reciprocal. So what we're going to put over here is back to identity. So if you remember, the additive identity equals 0, and the multiplication identity equals 1. All right, then we have these problems here. So you want to put down, if it's a commutative property of multiplication, you're going to put that down. If it's the property of 0, you're going to put that down. If it's the inverse property of addition or multiplication, you're going to put that down. So it's not just the property anymore, it's the property and whether it's addition or multiplication. Go ahead and give these last few a try here. All right, let's go through them. We have 3 times 2 equals 2 times 3. Looks like we changed the order, which means it's going to be the commutative of multiplication because we're multiplying. All right, we multiplied 16 times 1 and we got 16. What is that called? That's going to be called the identity of multiplication. We multiplied 22 times its reciprocal and we got 1. Well, that's going to be the inverse of multiplication. Number 4, we multiplied 156 times 0. We ended up with 0. That's a property of 0. Now this one we're doing addition. We changed the way we group these ones down here. So we got negative 8 plus 5 plus 3 equals negative 8 plus the quantity of 5 plus 3. We changed the way we grouped them. So this is the associative of addition. And we got 2 more. This one's very similar, but we have multiplication here down here. So we're doing 5 times 2, the quantity of that times 4 equals 5 times the quantity of 2 times 4. So that one is going to be associative of multiplication. And the last one, we changed the way we order these. 5 plus 12 equals 12 plus 5. That's the commutative of addition. All right, there are notes for today. So the main things to take away. Multiplying same signs equals positive. Negative, different signs equals negative. This thing down here is a little tricky. If this is still kind of confusing to you, just don't worry about it. We'll get through it together. We'll go through it in class. But basically, multiply the numbers, add the exponents of the variables. And also right here, I forgot to mention, this is y to the first power. Where there's no variable there, it's going to be to the first. Where there's no exponent, it's going to be to the first power there. Okay? Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we will talk soon.